Recording
Okay.
now,
Okay. Start going in.
and let's
Just
let's
give
just
me
jump right into it.
okay, wait, if you can. Give me one second. I just have to what's are we recording?
Yeah.
And this okay. Can you this part out or is not necessary or
So I'm here this morning with a friend of mine, Josh Hasten, who is in a small town just south of Jerusalem. And the purpose of us getting together here on the Zoom is to give the American people, and especially the Jewish community who's watching and listening, really just an unfiltered look into what's happening right now on the ground in Israel, what the morale of the Israeli people and the IDF is like right now, and what the path forward looks like. So with Josh, before coming on here, you told me that just minutes ago, seconds ago, you were hearing sirens. Tell us about that, and tell the American people what it's like living your life right now, hearing sirens every 10 minutes.
so ironically the sirens are probably the least scary of everything going on right now. That's not to say it's not you know it's not normal that sirens have become so normal. The fact that they fired Hamas and the other terror groups have fired thousands of rockets at us. So I'm here in Gush Etzion, just south of Jerusalem, about 20 kilometers away from Jerusalem. We just had a major barrage, both in Jerusalem and in Tel Aviv, in the center of the country. Over my head, you hear the Iron Dome intercepting the rockets. We didn't actually, we're exactly where I'm situated. It's such a precise system. We didn't hear the siren, but 5 kilometers down the road, in other communities here in the Gush Etzion, we did have a siren. And in Jerusalem, the center of town, there was a rocket which did get through. I don't see any reports of any injuries. Thank God. Right now, the Knesset's actually meeting right now, some sort of emergency session because of the war. I would not be surprised if Hamas knew that the Knesset was in session, because the lawmakers actually had to go down into the Knesset bomb shelters. But I did hear the at least 2 or 3 Iron Dome interceptions above head. Earlier today, I was in the south of the country, closer to Ashdod. Unfortunately, I was at a Shiva call. I was paying respects to the dead, one of the 1,300 plus Israelis who were murdered. This was someone who was going to be a close family member, somebody who was marrying into the family, who was actually a hero. He died a hero. He was at that big festival or concert on Friday night there on the border with Gaza when Hamas attacked civilians, men, women, and children, murdering everyone in sight, and those who they didn't succeed to murder, taking them prisoners. So this, I'll call him a kid. He was actually an IDF soldier who was on leave, was at the festival. He knew right away from his training, he knew what was going on. He knew it was an emergency situation. And instead of running, he saw people wounded, stopped to heal those wounded. And I actually have footage. I have pictures of this kid, a young man, 22, 23, treating the wounded instead of running for his life. And eventually Hamas caught up to him and shot him 3 times. He was able to call my family member, his future wife, and say, "I love you. I've been shot," and that's the last they heard of him. They weren't sure if he was killed, captured, taken back to Gaza. We now learned today that approximately, I think it's over 150 confirmed Israelis, if not more, have been taken captured by Hamas. And really, the atrocities that we're hearing, more and more stories coming out from and I don't know how they're able to do this. The teams who are sent in to recover the bodies and try to identify those who were murdered. It's something we haven't seen since the Middle Ages. I'm talking about, sorry to be graphic, but cutting open, murdering pregnant women and cutting out their babies. People their bodies were found with missing fingers, missing limbs, because Hamas wanted their jewelry. So they cut off their fingers to take the jewelry. People burned alive, burned in their cars alive, beheadings. I mean, this is literally medieval. We have not seen anything like this. Again, obviously, the Holocaust was 6 million Jews murdered, and we know we haven't had that many Jews murdered in one single day as we did this last Saturday, 9 days ago. But in terms of the mutilation, the torture, the rape of women, the burning of children alive, all of that, Jewish children, because they're Jews, we haven't seen that in a long, long time. So that's where we stand now. It is constant, it is day and night. But just, I will say this, with all of that, with everything going on, despite the fact that our country has sustained thousands and thousands of rockets, despite the fact we've sustained 1,300 plus deaths, despite the fact that we have over 150, if not 200 Israelis missing, it's unbelievable the motivation, number one, of our troops. Number one, their motivation is extremely, extremely high. These guys want to wipe out evil, and that must be said. Hamas is pure evil, and they must be wiped out, and the motivation is extremely high. I'll also add the acts of good deeds, chesed, as we say in Hebrew, good deeds, and the unity which I've seen this week. I don't think has, again, there's no way to measure this, to actually, put this into numbers or whatnot and compare it to any other period. The last period maybe I can think of is 2014, when the 3 boys were kidnapped, eventually found killed by Hamas here actually in Gush Etzion. But in terms of the number of good deeds and the unity here in Israel, I think it's unprecedented, perhaps in the history of the Jewish people. There's no qualitative way to measure that. But the unity is strong, the motivation is strong to wipe out this evil. And Brian, at the end of the day, I think we have no choice but to do so. And I hope our leaders are listening. I hope our leaders do the right thing and do not stop this time. We have stopped before. Several times we've gone into Gaza, and several times we have stopped. And I'm not a military expert in any way necessary to wipe this evil off the face of the earth, not only for Israel, but for the sake of humanity, for the sake of the world.
Yeah, I there's a lot that I want to comment on, but the last thing that you just said about how, you hope Israelis politicians are listening in that, it is time to wipe Hamas off the map, and something, first of all, I agree wholeheartedly. Secondly, something that I've always wondered, as an American who loves Israel so much and has been engaged in this cause called Zionism, called the future of our people. I've never really truly understood, Josh, why the Israeli government has never wiped Hamas off the map. This is not the first attack. Granted, this is most certainly the deadliest, bloodiest, for sure, by no possible measure or comparison to anything else. But I can think of at least 20 times in the last just 10 years alone where, it's been Israel under attack. Hamas is launching rockets. Hamas is doing this. Why do you think there's been like this reluctance from the Israeli government to just wipe Hamas off the map?
Yeah, and let me add to that. People sometimes often overlook the fact that in the 90s and the early 2000s, it was Hamas leading the way in the suicide bombings, blowing up, Holocaust survivors in hotels over a Passover.
Pure evil.
Pure evil. 30 people murdered in the Pesach Seder. This was the doing of Hamas, of course. The PA and their terror branches were also involved in this. And really, I think the main problem is why it's not happening now. And I really haven't talked about this until now, because at this point, I've been focusing on the unity and focusing on what positive and the things that have been going on here, the positive that we can take out of this horrible tragedy. But since you asked, unfortunately, the policy has always been, since the Oslo Accord, since 1993, is we have to have someone to talk to on the other side. If Israel is not going to be in a position of control, whether in Judea and Samaria or in Gaza, we have to have somebody to talk to. So first it was the legitimizing the PLO, which was our first mistake back in the 90s. The PA formed from the PLO. We're talking about Yasser Arafat, now Mahmoud Abbas. So we decided that was the address. We created we created these zones, areas A, B, and C throughout Judea and Samaria, and area A was turned over 100% to PA control. And then we said there are peace partners, even though the incitement continued in the PA and the hate education and the attacks. The buses started blowing up just days really after we signed the Oslo Accords. We said, no, there are peace partners, and we looked the other way. And then governments came along and we said, enough of this business, and Hamas came to be. But we continued down the path of saying, okay, no, the PA, they're still the good guys. Hamas, now we have this entity, Hamas, they're the bad guys. And then most recently we said, well, Hamas is controlling Gaza. Well, obviously we're not going to legitimize, well, we kind of did. We're not going to recognize Hamas because they are a terror organization, recognized all over the world as a terror organization. We're going to say the Palestinian, the PIJ, the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, no, they're the bad terrorists these days. The last several rounds, and we know now this was all a ruse, the last several rounds of rocket attacks on Israel, Hamas made it crystal clear, we're not involved in this. We're not involved in this. It's the PIJ, it's not us. Obviously, nothing happens in Gaza without Hamas, but Israel fell for it, essentially. They said, well, Hamas, you're not firing now, we're going to leave you alone. And Israel, the last time we had to target anybody in Gaza, we targeted the PIJ and we left Hamas alone. All along, they're planning this major, unprecedented terror attack against us. It's this, to answer your question, it's this logic that we have to have a partner. We have to have somebody to talk to. And that's why for years now, trucks have been lined up on the Gaza border with Israel, delivering humanitarian goods into Gaza on a daily basis, truckloads of humanitarian goods. That's why the border has been open to over 18,000 workers coming in every single day. And while they were here, we know now, obviously, that they were scoping the communities, picking targets, completely faithful to Hamas. And we went down that path and we kept going. And even now, I mean, I don't understand. You ask me, I don't understand why the water was turned back on in southern Gaza. I understand, the logic is, okay, we've told a million Gazans to keep going south. We turned off the water. We told them to go south. But what country would aid their enemy by providing them with water? If somebody came into your house, God forbid, and said that they were going to kill you or going to try to kill you, are you going to turn around and offer the guy a glass of water? I don't understand it. Everyone should know, or pretends not to know, that Egypt also shares a border with Gaza. If anybody should be turning on the water to Gaza or electricity or whatnot, let Egypt do it. But it's ironic, not one Arab country is stepping up for these people. And yet, the Israel haters, Israel, you did this and that. Ultimately, everything, Hamas is responsible that everything that happens in Gaza, they're responsible if any of their civilians are suffering, it's in their hands. But yet the Arab world is silent. The Arab world is not stepping in. In 1948, when 800,000 Jews were thrown out of the Middle East, Israel took them in like that. Like that, they took them in. With a brand new country, with little resources, we took them in. And the Arab world ignored all of the Arabs who were here. Same thing's happening again. They're ignoring them. They want them there as pawns. They want them there in Gaza. They want them to suffer. They want the eyes of the world and the international community and the media to point their finger at Israel and wave their finger at Israel like we're the bad guy, when Hamas are the bad guys. They're the evil here.
You are, Josh, you're exactly correct. And you and I were on Newsmax just the other day, and I mentioned this. Where's the outpouring of tangible support, from the civilized Arab world, in offering to take in any refugees, or truly, doing things to try and help the situation. I've got to be honest with you. I've been such an outspoken supporter of the Abraham Accords. I think it was just truly an amazing thing, that happened just a few years back. And as I look at all this unfolding, I can't hide my disappointment, in a lot of these countries that have really not stepped up to fully condemn Hamas. They've been very silent, in fact, and also we look at the Qataris and the role that they're playing right now in giving safe haven to Hamas, in allowing Iran's foreign minister to arrive in Qatar and kiss the leaders of Hamas on the cheeks and hug them and, hey, job well done, boys. This is happening in Qatar, and Qatar is supposed to be an ally of the United States of America. So there's a lot of disappointment that I'm having right now throughout the civilized Arab world. But let's talk about the non-civilized Arab world for a second. I want you to say,
just want to let you know, sorry to interrupt, we are getting another bombardment right as we speak. The center of the country is getting hit. The Tel Aviv area, Ramat Gan, Tel Aviv. Right now, my area, I'm actually recording from a safe space in my home. I'll probably hear within seconds the booms going off. I apologize for interrupting. But right now, nothing again towards Jerusalem. There could be any second. I just want, just so people understand what we're talking about. I mean, we started talking about 8-10 minutes ago. We're just after an attack, and there's another attack taking place right now. But I'm not moving, even if there's a siren here. I'm here in a safe space. So sorry to interrupt you. Just when people should understand what we're going through here.
Thank God you're in a safe place. And let's say the quiet part out loud right now. Okay. Who is funding Hamas? Who is funding the PIJ? Who is funding Hezbollah? Who is funding this? Tell me.
Yeah, no, it's all Iran. Iran has tentacles all over the Middle East and all over the world. People shouldn't think that this is just limited to the Middle East, whether it's South America or countries all over the world. Iran is the source, Iran is the inspiration, Iran provides the funding, the money, the weaponry, the training, everything you see. Hezbollah in the north of Israel, and that's a front which is heating up now as well over the last 48 hours. Hamas, and Iran rather is providing Hamas with the know-how, the weaponry, the encouragement, everything. It's ironic, Hamas, which is a Sunni organization, Hezbollah, which is a Shia organization. On the surface of it, they probably don't like each other. When push comes to shove, but when it comes to attacking Israel, they have no problem collaborating, cooperating. All of that hatred they have for each other, you think of like the Iran-Iraq war and everything we've seen in the past here in the Middle East, all that is at this point is pushed to the side. Iran is the head of the snake. Iran has to be dealt with ultimately. And you do have, the axis of evil there, Iran and China and Russia, and all those partners who are lending a hand, whether literally lending a hand or in terms of finances and support, or egging these people on, encouraging them. And you probably know more than I do in terms of how deep this goes with all the other international partners. But at the end of the day, Israel's biggest challenge is, what are we going to do about the Iranian threat, which looms above our heads, whether it's Tehran itself and their aim at acquiring nuclear weapons and other ballistic missiles, or their proxies, Hezbollah in Syria and in Lebanon, and of course the brutal massacre carried out by Hamas. Iran is the address at the end of the day, and I know our leaders know that. I mean, Prime Minister Netanyahu has been talking about Iran for 30 years now. I'm in the middle of his book right now, and he's mentioning Iran, and he talks about how he knew about Iran back in the 80s when the fall of the Shah, all the way back to then. So we know who the enemy is. We know who daily incites to violence and bloodshed with the goal of wiping off. And your listeners should know this, and your viewers should know this. Not just the little Satan. They view Israel as the little Satan. They view the United States as the big Satan. Don't make any mistake about it. And I only wish the Biden administration would recognize that, instead of showing weakness time and time again. We could say thank you to the Biden administration for coming out with statements this week in support of Israel and whatnot. But we can't overlook the fact that the Biden administration has shown extreme weakness towards the Iranians. It's like a mafia boss, and paying off the mafia boss, hoping you're going to get good results when you pay off the mafia. And that's never the case. You'll never get good results when you pay them off and show weakness. Only strength wins. This isn't the US-Canadian border here. This is the Middle East. You don't show strength and they're going to walk all over you. Israel understands that. It's time Israel shows that. And it's time the Biden administration understands that as well with its policies.
Well said. I think you're exactly correct. I think anyone that even knows just a little bit about the Islamic Republic of Iran knows what they as a government are all about. And it's also important to draw a line in the sand. And I've seen this up close and personal, not in Iran, but in other places, that there really is a difference of opinion between the Iranian people and the Islamic Republic of Iran. I think the Iranian people are natural allies and supporters of the Israeli people. I see that through the Iranian American diaspora that I've interfaced with over the years. Every single one of them supports Israel, supports Zionism. So that's a sliver of good news about the Islamic Republic of Iran, which, by the way, they always say to me, Brian, you have to say the Islamic Republic of Iran, because that's who they are.
Right.
I am a citizen of Iran, not the Islamic Republic of Iran, is what they would say to me.
Sure.
But to stay on that, Josh, it's anyone, again, with 10%, knowledge of the situation knows who the Islamic Republic is, has been for the last 40, 50 plus years. To your point, it's death to America, death to Israel, while also being the world's leading funder of terrorism all throughout the world. There's no doubt Hamas would be able to have carried out these attacks in the first place. if it was not for the material, financial, logistical support that they receive from Hamas. I mean, that's a no-brainer. Everyone knows that. And I echo your thoughts about being appreciative of my government, of the Biden administration in over the past week. They definitely have shown an overwhelming show of force and support for the people and land of Israel. You've seen that in words and in actions, from the carrier strike groups that are sitting out in the Mediterranean right now to potentially special forces that are already on the ground in Israel. So a lot of those things have happened, but I will say, and this all comes back to the point you just made, I don't think any of this would be happening in the first place if the Biden administration had not been exerting strength. And let's not forget, it was the Biden administration stepping into the situation in the Middle East where the Islamic Republic of Iran had $4 or $5 billion in international reserves, and I mean that's a couple months of rent, for that country before they were done. And instead of enforcing maximum sanctions, maximum pressure, they ignored all of it. Yes, the sanctions were on the books, but they never enforced the sanctions. So the Islamic Republic continued to sell oil to Venezuela, China, whatever. Anyways, the bottom line is now they're over $70 billion in international reserves, which really makes them just such a powerhouse in the Middle East. And I'm looking at a story right now that just hit my phone that Biden is calling the potential Israeli occupation of Gaza as a big mistake, while he also said in 60 Minutes last night that he only wants the extreme part of Hamas to be eradicated, alluding that I guess there's a non-extreme version of Hamas. So I know I just said a lot there, but
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, what are your thoughts as an Israeli? I mean, I know you're appreciative that the Biden administration has stepped up, but I mean, we've got to be honest about where this came from, and it came from Iran, and Iran never would have been able to do any of this in the first place if not. I mean, am I wrong? Am I right? What are your thoughts?
No, listen, I saw that headline this morning as well. I didn't watch 60 Minutes live. It was too late here, but it was kind of one of those I'm shocked, not shocked moments. And again, I agree with what your sentiment in terms of the appreciation for everything that we've seen until now, but a little bit shocking that as all of this is going on, the Biden administration is now saying, well, Israel, you can't so-called occupy Gaza. That's not the end goal. And we need to strive for a two-state solution. How can you be talking about a two-state solution right now? Look what happened when Israel relinquished Gaza, pulled out every citizen, exhumed the bodies of every last Jew in 2005. That's why we are in the situation we are in now, because there is no IDF presence on the ground in Gaza. There's no way they would be able to pull this off. If IDF soldiers, and there were Jewish communities in Gaza, they wouldn't have been able to do this. So it took a while, it took many years of planning and whatnot. But in 2005, when Israel had a presence in Gaza, what we saw this last Saturday was impossible to achieve. And now we're still talking about a two-state solution. I mean, that essentially is saying, we're going to reward you, Hamas, for carrying this out. And in terms of differentiating, I don't have numbers in terms of how many supporters there are in Gaza or whatnot, but Hamas was elected with the Gazans back in 2000 and whatever it was, 2007. They're the ones who voted for Hamas in the regional elections there, and ultimately Hamas initiated a violent coup to take over from the Palestinian Authority. So you can't say, well, they're civilians, they're just civilians. You do have 5-6 different terrorist groups in Gaza. You have people who voted Hamas into power. You have people supporting Hamas, giving them any type of backing. I mean, if you're hiding Hamas in your house, you're hiding Hamas. Just like back after 9/11, President Bush, I remember, said, if you are aiding or supporting or hiding any of these terrorists to carry out the attacks on 9/11, then it's just like you are then. You are part of you are considered a target. And that's the same situation here in Gaza. And unfortunately, as time goes on, as we move further away from the horrible events of Simchat Torah last Shabbat, more and more voices are coming out. The head of NATO came out and said Israel needs to carry out a proportionate response to what's going on in Gaza. And I'm thinking in my head, really? What's a proportionate response? You mean Israel has to go in and rape and mutilate women in Gaza and behead children? Because that's proportionate. If you're talking about we have to do exactly what they did, that means we have to count how many dead do we have kill the exact same number of how many exact same number in Gaza of the Arabs there was 1,300. Okay, we killed 1,300. How many women were raped? Let's count them up, and we have to go rape the exact same amount. I mean, the moral compass of some of these leaders, you know, the head of NATO, are just so skewed. And with the Biden administration right now, that's essentially a reward to say we want a two-state solution. That's the ultimate goal. That's going to bring peace. Look what happened when we gave away Gaza. This is the perfect example, sadly. We gave away every inch that Israel's given away, every inch of territory has become a base for terrorism, a terror launching pad for rockets. There's no two-state solution. That thing is done. Even the Israeli left now, after this last attack last week, the Israeli left and right are unified in the fact that there's no way we're going down that path. So again, disappointed with the statements over the last 24 hours by the Biden administration.
Yeah, you know, to add on to that, you know, I knew you want peace. I know every Israeli I speak to, whether they're on the left or the right in Israel, you know, they want peace. We all want peace. You know, the massacre that happened this past weekend certainly is like nothing we've ever seen before. But we can't ignore the fact that these types of killings in cold blood have been happening for decades. You know, and this has been the calling card of any radical, really terrorist group in the region. And forgive me for saying they're probably all very radical. I mean, if there's citizens that are supporting terrorist groups, in my opinion, they're no longer citizens or civilians anymore. And you know, I as an American, you know, looking out on the outside looking in, you know, I've always maintained a position that I Israel doesn't have a partner for peace. So, you know, where is this two-state solution? You know, how is that actually, you know, going to happen? And honestly, I've never really seen a pathway for that. So, you know, I've really dispelled the theory that there ever will be a two-state solution. There is one state. It's the state of Israel, a state that has roughly about 2 million Arabs that are now Israeli citizens that have a much better quality of life than certainly living under the rule of Hamas or the Palestinian Authority. So yeah, I think the two-state solution is dead. It's been dead on arrival, if I'm being frank with you.
Absolutely.
You know, and it's just not going anywhere. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. A two-state solution is a no-state solution because it's an existential threat to the state of Israel. We can't go down that path. And I think more and more, unfortunately, more and more people as a result of last week understand this. But, you know, world leaders still don't get it. They still don't understand what we're dealing with here. We're a tiny sliver amongst a sea of Arab countries and Muslim countries. And you don't divide your tiny country into another state, make it an additional state, you know, west of the Jordan River between the sea and the sea and the river. That's which is what they're calling for, by the way. You know, people who say this is about Judea and Samaria, the communities as they call it, the West Bank, a term I don't use, but they say it's all about that. And ironically, by the way, you know, Hamas, when they did this, carried out this attack, they were talking about, you know, we are carrying out a mission in occupied Sderot and the occupied lands of southwestern Israel. So they don't refer to Efrat and Bethel and those areas as the occupied territory, so-called. They refer to, you know, what all even left wing, what have you, so-called, you know, Israel proper, people who support only Israel proper, those individuals, they refer to those areas, and Haifa as well, and Jaffa and Akko, they refer to the entire country as one big occupation. So anyone who thinks about these so-called settlements, that's not what this is about. And Hamas shows it time and time again. These weren't people in Judea and Samaria who they murdered ruthlessly and savagely last Shabbat.
Yeah, Josh, I have another question to end on, but I do want to just
Sure.
add with a quick note here. Certainly, we have seen world leaders already starting to change their tune from just a couple days ago. Oh my God, what a horrible massacre! To now, there has to be a proportionate response, and Israel has to do this and do this and do this, whatever. More of that's going to come. We know that. But I will tell you, Josh, I was just in Budapest, Hungary, actually, as all these events unfolded. And from the Hungarian defense minister to the Hungarian justice minister to Hungary's ambassador to the United States of America, everyone that I met and encountered from the highest echelons of their government to non-government officials, to ordinary citizens. Every single one of them had a common theme or a common message for me. And that is that we have always stood with Israel and the Jewish community. We will continue to stand with Israel and the Jewish community. And when the world starts to change their tune about what's happening, we will not. And it was such a powerful thing for me to hear and feel. And I want you to know, granted, Hungary is not a very big country. It's a country similar to Israel of less than 10 million people. But Israel does have allies on the world stage and countries that are going to stand with you, with us, no matter what it takes. And it's important. I think it's important for you to know. Of course, the United Nations is going to have their moment of silence for the Palestinians that have been killed. Insanity. But I think the world at large is going to stand with Israel. So I want to close on this final question here.
Sure.
You mentioned, sadly, the family member of yours that is not going to become a family member. What's the morale like of the Israeli people right now? I mean, to put it in perspective for everyone, 1,300 dead Israelis is like the equivalent of almost 50,000 Americans, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
It's unheard of. It's a massacre of epic proportions, mini Holocaust-esque. What's the morale of the Israeli people, the IDF, that you're hearing and seeing every minute there?
So let me just say, first of all, in terms of your comments before, we appreciate any support we can get. If it's Hungary, we know the United States in the US, we know the people of the US are with Israel. There's no question in my mind, the citizens of the United States, regardless of who's in the White House, is on our side. Let me just say that. And any support we can get from any nation who's willing to stand on the side of good, the side of light, the side of morality, we'll take it. And we really, really appreciate it. So thanks for that. In terms of the morale here, there's no doubt we have suffered tremendous losses. And I don't know, it's basically hit the entire country. It's such a small place, as you know. I don't know of any community that hasn't suffered either a loss or has somebody missing. By the way, there are people who are missing and who were killed that are citizens of the United States, citizens of Canada, citizens of Europe. These are foreign nationals, foreign workers who are in Israel who were murdered as well. So on one hand, we are burying the dead and we are in mourning. On the other hand, Israel is the most resilient country on the face of the earth. We have no option other to be that source of resilience in the world. And the motivation of the IDF and the soldiers is unparalleled. They are ready. They are chomping at the bit. They're ready for whatever comes their way. I don't know what's going to be, every reports and media reports of a ground operation, and I don't have the authority or the know-how or the ability to tell you yes, no, when, where, what. I can't tell you that, but I know this from friends who are down there, children of friends who are down there. They want to eradicate Hamas, and the morale of our troops is the highest it's ever been. And if anybody out there is a Hamas supporter and happens to watch this video, I will tell you this: we are coming, and we are coming hard, and you will pay the price. Those who carry this out, and I know Israel's bombing now, and some of the Hamas leaders have already been taken out. If you are out there, you did this evil, and we are coming to get you. And I pray to God our leadership goes all the way. But Israel is coming, the morale is high, the motivation is high. We are trained, ready, and we have all the tools at our disposal to do so. So I want to end on that. Thank you for your support. Thank you for the time to allow me to express my thoughts on your program here, on your show, on your Zoom, whatever you want to call it. Just a friendly chat here between friends, discussing the reality here. But this is a long path. We've been down this path not for 75 years, the Jewish people. We've been down this path for 4,000 years. We had 6 million butchered just 75 years ago. We had 1,300 butchered last week. It's a long road. We're still here. The Babylonians, the Romans, all the way down. They're not here anymore. We are still here. We will continue. We will overcome this horrible, horrible massacre, and we'll keep on going, Brian.
That's our only option. That is really our only option as Jews, whether a Jew like yourself living in Israel or or me in Florida. As you said, this is, not something that's just happened over the last 10 years, 50 years, 100 years. It has been century after century that the evil forces of the world have been trying to wipe Jews off the map, and it's never happened. We've always come back stronger than ever before, and in the darkest of times, and this past week has been pure hell for you, for me, for everyone. Pure hell. But I know that we will rise out of this stronger than ever before. And I know that we are shining our light onto the world right now. And I would also offer a message like you did to any of the Hamas supporters in Israel, similar here to America. These Hamas supporters, these people that are taking to the streets all throughout the country on college campuses to chant for Israel's destruction and to kill more Jews. We see who you are. We know who you are. We're not going to forget who you are. And anyone that's going to support Hamas, you're putting your cards on the table. So, Josh, thank you
I'm
for
in.
making the time. I'm gonna put this up into a video completely unfiltered.
Go
And I
for it.
think it's important for people to see this and hear the words that you're saying. And you have a friend in me. You have a friend in millions of Americans, Jews and non-Jews. So whatever we can do to
Absolutely.
help, you just message me and we're here. You know that.
Will do. Thank you so much for your support and thank you for your time. Thanks a lot, Brian.
Of course, man.